Hello world, my name is Stephanye Watts and I'm the founder of the Be Real Black Cinema Club, and I am so excited to be here with you for the 28th annual New York African Film Festival. Big shout outs to Mahan and Dara and the entire New York African Film Festival team, and a real big shout out to the director that I'll be in conversation with today, Victorious De Costa. Clap it up, clap it up, clap it up. Woo!
Thank you. Thank
Crowd
you.
going wild.
Thank you. Thank you.
No, thank you for giving us Digging for Weldon Irvine. Like, the film was so amazing. Like, I was trying to quell my hypeness when people are talking via email, but I have so many things I want to discuss. But before we get into that, if you could just give us a quick introduction about you, your work, your other films that I'm also excited about. So take it away.
Well, my name is Victorious De Costa, and I'm from a small town called East Flatbush, Brooklyn. In most of my life, I actually was in music, music management, and DJing. I started filmmaking about 6 years ago. I did a few short films, but I always was with the camera, growing up. I didn't know what I was doing, but always had, cameras. Even when I go in my little room, I have like 5 different JVCs and everything. So I think I always was doing this, I always was documenting. My first feature film is the one that we're discussing today, Digging for Weldon Irvine. And I started developing that film in 2015. And the other film you speak of is Yusuf Hawkins' Storm Over Brooklyn, which you can now see on HBO Max. And we started development of that in 2016. So you can do the math. It was kind of both at the same time. That's who I am, filmmaker.
So I love documentaries. Like, I love film in general, but I love documentaries. I just love hearing people talk about their stories or sharing the story of someone else. But I always wonder when folks make these docs, why that subject?
Okay.
Why did you have to tell this story in this particular time?
Wow. So Digging for Weldon Irvine. So one, it wasn't my idea. It was my friend and my EP, G. Clef Cavacino. He was one of Weldon's friends. He's in the film as well. And he saw some of my short film work, or more so my accolades. I don't even know if he even saw any of the short films. He just, when you're changing careers, people need to see things to take you seriously. And he said, oh, okay, you should do a film about Weldon. And I think he was influenced by seeing the Jaco Pastorius documentary. He was a friend of Jaco's as well. And I had no idea who Weldon Irvine was. I wasn't really a jazz. I wasn't at all. Okay, I'll do it. I wasn't at all a listener of jazz. I did not like funk. I did not like, so I just was totally removed from the subject material. So I thought, well, what I did was I researched him, and I found very little of him online. What I did find is that this person composed over 500 songs, and he touched a lot of lives, whether it be jazz, soul, hip hop, rock, just all types of different music and Black American music. But I didn't know about him. So I instantly got, a bit sad because oh, okay, this guy powered so many movements, but we don't know him. And I felt like a parallel between he and I, not with the 500 compositions, but in my, tenure doing music, I did feel forgotten, at some times. I was the backbone in different places. And so that really resonated within me. And then I found out how he left the planet. And then it was like, oh, wow. So it's not good, right? And I guess we're going to do a spoiler. He died by suicide, right? And I personally have 5 friends that died by suicide as well. And so that's something that I've been living with, proximity, to that for 20 or whatever years, however old I am, I get 25 years. And it was just a no-brainer. I didn't know how much work it was going to take because, like I said, there wasn't a lot of information on him. So I thought that, okay, whatever there is that I see, that's all there is. It's going to knock it out. I'm going to throw a camera over my shoulder, do like a smack DVD or something like that. I'm going to knock it out. That's what I thought, and I'm going to do it. And everyone will know that I'm a real filmmaker. And it just wasn't that, right? It just took me 4 years for a lot of different reasons. And so that's the foundation of the film. And I think that's why I had to do it, I believe. And it was, burning on my soul, and honestly, each year there was a different reason, right, that compelled me. And the first one was like, take me seriously, I can do films, because sometimes they don't take you seriously if you've only done short films, unfortunately. So I said, take me seriously, I'm about to do this. And then it just became like meeting his family. It became, all right, well, now I got to do this. Now I can't back out. Then it became me trying to race towards, my mother was sick, she was ill, and I was trying to race towards it to finish it for her. And then, then Weldon came along, somehow like a little blue bird on the shoulder and whispering in my ear, not literally, but it just became a part of me. And it was just like, no, there's no choice. It was just like a fire, I had to put out,
And I think what you said about like not knowing about him, but he was always kind of looming in the background of our lives is so real, because I'm watching this doc and I'm like, he looks familiar, but I can't really place him. And then it's like, oh yeah, I wrote Young, Gifted, and Black. Excuse me? Like, I've been singing this song since first grade and all the little Easter plays and all, like that song meant so much to me, right? And then just to skip ahead a little more, it's like, oh, and then, his work is being sampled by Tribe. I'm like, a war tour? Wait, what? Like, he's always been there in our lives. And I that really, I think is what shook me so much in watching this film, and just made me think about who are these other people who have always been like hovering our lives or soundtracking our lives, and we don't know their names.
Right.
And so, yeah, let's kind of talk a little bit about Weldon. So what excited me first was just hearing about him being raised on the campus of Hampton University. My uncle went to Hampton and is like really crazy about it. And there's like baby pictures of me and his son in the crib in Hampton shirts. Wow. My 16th birthday, he gave me the application to Hampton to apply. Wow. So just like that family history was just really huge for me. And I also started thinking about the ways in which Hampton, Virginia itself was such a hub for Black music. So everybody, when you think about Hampton, people think about Teddy Riley, and Teddy Riley going down there and then giving birth to Pharrell, who then gave birth to Missy and Timbaland, and then all the folks that they kind of gave birth to. So I wanted to talk a little bit about like the impact of Black music and the ways in which, we think of like New York and LA as these like hotbeds for music, but look at all the folks that Weldon was able to birth through this film. So if you could talk a little bit about kind of his kind of lineage that he built in this corner of Queens that folks really weren't thinking about, but was a really like hotbed for jazz music.
Right. So one thing, Virginia gets a raw deal as far as music. They don't get their flowers. And like you mentioned, there's just so many people that have come out of Richmond or, Hampton, Virginia Beach. And so that's one thing. And so, Weldon recognized that early. And I don't know if it's because they're East Coast, but they're in the middle of everything, Mm-hmm. And so he split, right? Weldon left town to go to the big city, right? He came to Jamaica, Queens, or St. Albans, Queens. And at that time in 65, I believe, there was a big push to get Black families out of Harlem and parts of Brooklyn into these new places in Queens, right? So I've heard advertisements about that. So it was like a big rush, right? Sort of like how you had people from Mississippi coming to Chicago. There was a big rush to go to St. Albans, Queens, which was, going to be the new suburbs for our people. So there, Weldon quickly found friends. He quickly found people who either were from the area. He had family there, so he was staying with family, or he found people at a gig. And Weldon had something in him that was special because Weldon was mentored already when he was still a teenager back in Hampton by jazz greats. He would write them letters, and they'll write back and they'll tell him how to get your writing credit and your publishing. And I have, what's not in the film, I have his first copyright paper is 1961, and he was still in high school. It was called Weldon's Riff. So, Weldon was always in tune in terms of business, and this attracted a lot of the people in the Jamaica Queens area. And, we know a lot about Harlem and Lower Manhattan, but there was a very big scene out there in Queens for people who couldn't go down there, and people who came from Long Island down to Queens. And one thing about Weldon claims, right, I wasn't there, that he had a form of music that he called rock jazz. And this is something that people would later call, jazz fusion, right? But Weldon's thing was, again, always about business. He felt like you can't just make money playing one type of music, then called jazz music. Some consider that term a pejorative, and they rather say Black American music. So pardon me if I slip in and out, but you can't just play one type of music, right? And you got to play your gospel, you got to play your rock, you got to play your R&B if you want to get paid, right? Because if someone comes down and you're playing the sax, but you're going to play one type of music, how are you going to get paid, And that was very attractive to a lot of the people who wanted to get paid. And also those who wanted to better themselves in the crafts would come to Weldon because of that. He pushed them into so many different directions, right? So he didn't really teach anyone how to play their instrument. He was sort of like a Professor X from the X-Men, where he would find people who were good and they were young, and he would teach them how to expand their boundaries, and then they would go off and be great. Like Lenny White, I believe Weldon met Lenny White when he was either 15 or 16, and Lenny White went on to play on Bitches Brew with Miles Davis when he was 16. So it's stories like that people were very empowered by Weldon. And they went a lot of different directions, whether it be to Miles Davis, to Phyllis Hyman. They just went everywhere, in terms of the jazz, soul, and R&B and rock world. And so that was his thing. And he had workshops in Jamaica, Queens, right? And mind you, I'm from Brooklyn, right? So I don't even like saying Queens too much, in one setting, but you got to give it up, right? You got to give it up, because one of the youths that was around Weldon was Larry Smith, and Larry Smith is one of the early producers of Run DMC, and so it's just that the tentacles reached very deep. You had Don Blackman, you had Marcus Miller, who was from Brooklyn, but he went to school with these guys at LaGuardia. You have Bernard Wright with the Who Do You Love? So Weldon was like Billy Cobham, who is another great artist, a legendary artist, considered one of the best drummers, in the world in any genre, called Weldon a kingmaker. But that's who he also was, a queen maker. He dealt with Camille Gaines, who is a great drummer herself. So that's the Jamaica Queen story. And I didn't even get to the hip hop, as far as 90s with Tribe Called Quest. It's that was Weldon.
Blown away by the level of mentorship. Like, how did he have all this time to impact so many people while he's at the same time building his own career? And so when I think about, like, when people are making documentaries, it's kind of like a quilt. Like, you're finding all these people to kind of piece together this person's story. So if you could, like, maybe share like a really cool story of like how you were led to one of the subjects, or how you were kind of able to create this web to tell such a full story.
Sure. So it definitely was a quilt. Definitely is a quilt. And so when we started, G. Clef told me that he knew Weldon's family, and he had a list of people who he played with Weldon. He was Weldon's last disciple, as he would say. And so I'm like, that's what we're going to do. We're going to call Q-Tip. He's going to say yes. And we're going to, had this long list of 19 people. And I like to say that first, I was in the film first, right? The film, because Clef told me that I reminded him of Weldon for whatever reason. And so the film, because I thought there was no information out there, the film is going to be me finding myself through my search for Weldon, which is why I was digging for Weldon Irvine. I'll go around different record stores and they wouldn't know who I was talking about. So that's first. But we couldn't find people, or people would say no, or they would ignore, right? For whatever reason, right? Some of them was like, well, who are you? And some of them was like, oh, this is a wound that's been closed for 15 years, then who are you, right? And so, I had to quickly restructure the story. And I said, you know what? All these who are yous, I respect them, but they're kind of annoying. So, I need to really dig my heels in and connect with Weldon's family, starting with his son. So at that point, my father had passed 5 years previously, and I just know I wanted to express to Weldon's son, like, who didn't really know too much about his father for whatever reason. Like, he had a gold plaque under his bed and stuff like that. Like, he didn't, like, because you got to remember, like, his son is at that point maybe 2021, and in the hip hop world, Weldon's biggest accomplishments are considered to be, that which happened 10 years before his birth. It's like telling me, yeah, your father was Big Willie Johnson and he played the blues. Like, it's like, okay, whatever. Who? Mos Def? Okay, I get Mos Def, but I don't really understand it. So I knew it was very important, for man to man, be like, yo, you need to know who your father is. Like, regardless of the film, right? You might not want me to do it. If you say no, I'm not going to do it. But you need to know who your father is, right? And that just helps you, even after your father's, physical death. It's going to help you. It's going to help you out in the world. And he was with it. And I met both of Weldon's sisters. One of them flew down. Lois flew from another state to New York, and Linda, who also lives in another state, they met up with me, had me at a table, and it was like, who are you? Like, they grilled me. Of course they grilled me. Who are you? We don't know you, and they left giving me their approval. And then there was one more person, Miss Marjorie Moon, who was the director for decades of the Billie Holiday Theater in Brooklyn. Finally, Brooklyn comes back in. And she knew Weldon, was very, very close to Weldon for years and years. And people, even the family, was like, spoke to Marjorie Moon, because she was the closest, right? They lived together at the time of his death. And I tried, and it was like, no, right? It was like 4 different times. And one of Weldon's sisters, Linda, tried, and she was like, tell him no, right? So it was like this mad no's, right? I had a friend of mine who worked on the film with me as associate producer, Luis, and I said, call her up and put your little voice on. And it was like, no. And we were still going on with the film, but I didn't feel empowered because Marjorie Moon told me no, that she would not be in it, or she would not support it. And so I asked her, hey, okay, look, I know you heard of me because I know you got messages from mad different people. You must have seen my emails and my Facebooks and everything. Can we just talk? Can we just talk? Right? And you'll get to know who I am. And, if you say no, then I understand that. But can we just talk? And she said, all right, meet. And I met her at a diner, somewhere in New York. And I sat down, and it's like, you want to order something? And she's like, I ate before I came. I just wanted to check you out. So,
no, okay, don't play.
Right. So, we spoke, and she said, I don't know who you are, and I know you didn't know Weldon because I know everyone who knew Weldon, and and she just was like that. And why do you want to do it? And I just told her whatever it was at the time, and I asked for her blessing, and she, went to the restroom and came back out and said, okay. And I remember she said it's because, I guess, that I asked, and I put that much importance on her voice. Said that okay that she gives it her blessing, but she would not appear in it, is what she said. And after that, it's like the quote became a lot easier. All the pieces became, revealed. A lot of them became revealed, as far as the jazz world. And so I ended up doing about, I think, 20 interviews, which is a lot, people. I don't know if a lot of the viewers watch documentaries, but that's a lot of people to interview. And I was maybe 2.5 years in. And then Marjorie Moon told me to bring Weldon's son to her house. And we went. And she had like 7 boxes, like big old boxes of stuff. And I say stuff respectfully, of Weldon's personal effects, right? And she was sharing them with me and giving them to him. So there was music, there were pictures, there were family letters from, talk about Hampton stuff. It was like letters from Weldon's mom to her father, dating back, I'm just gonna say the 40s, definitely the 40s, could be the 30s, because these were things that were before Weldon's birth. And it's like that old school like handwriting that, you know, we couldn't even read, even when we did do script. It's like, wow, these like it's the Constitution type of stuff, you know. That's a triggering word today, Constitution. But anyway, so one thing that was there were a bunch of cassette tapes of Weldon speaking. And Weldon would apparently, I'm told, he would walk around with his then boombox or whatever tape device there was in whatever era it was, and he just plop it down and record. So if you were and I were in the same space, he would just, you know, plop it down and record it and label it Stephanye Victorious, you know, January 11th, and he put it away, the whole conversation. Things that, you know, if he called the radio, he would record it. He would record just like group sessions that he would have, this think tank workshops about society and everything, record everything. And I'm telling you, there were over 100 tapes. Wow. Now, at that point, I had 20, I think it might have been 30, it might be 30. Wait, let's see, 25. I had a lot of interviews of people, right? But it felt like at that point, it was like looking for me, you know, it's, all right, what's up? You know what I mean? And there was one recording I had of Weldon from online, from a radio interview, but now I had this, all of the Weldon, all these scenarios, and it was dating back from 65, the first recording that he had, which was when his mother passed, you know, down to the 2000s. And as a filmmaker and an editor, I edited the film. It's like, Dak, I got all these people, but now I got Weldon. It's like, what do I do with all these people? So if you are watching and you're supposed to be in the film, I'm sorry, I had to bump you a little bit for Weldon. But then I really got to know who this person was. And I had his things just everywhere, you know. I had his things everywhere in the bathroom. Everywhere was Weldon Irvine. I guess this is the me wrapping myself up in the quilt, you know, per se. And it just became a soul thing, right? And I do feel as though I met Weldon, you know, on an energetic, or some would say a spiritual level. At any rate, you know, I definitely internalized his hours and hours and hours of his voice. I slept with it. I just like, just me and Weldon for a long time. Me, Weldon, and Yusef, and my mom, and stuff like that, whatever, right? And I wanted to double back with that, because look at a quilt. Quilts are beautiful, right? But they ain't perfect, right? Like it's a bunch of stuff, and it doesn't tell you about the process it takes, depending on the quilt, to separate, right, each piece from the whole that it was to put on this quilt, right? And doesn't speak about the process of where to place all these things, right? So the first thing you said, you prefaced it with, well, about like where all that time come from. Yeah, well, how do you have time to do all this type of stuff? You didn't. Right? So you bring in the mental wellness aspect. There's a lot going on in this guy's head, right? It looked like a quilt in his head, right? One of those big quilts though, you know, mad little pieces, right? It was a mosaic in his head. And it's hard, right? That's very hard to deal with. And so everyone who I talked to felt like Weldon was their best friend. Weldon, they all have stories of Weldon will pop up and give them hours of time. And I'm like, on Tuesday? Yeah. And you said Tuesday too? Like, yeah. It's like, well, how did he do all that on a Tuesday? You know, but Weldon made time for everyone except, you know, for himself. And that does a whole lot, you know, in the mind. And pardon me for using that motion, but there's a whole lot, you know, in the mind. And when you also put in the responsibility he felt he had towards the Black community and humanity itself, it was a whole lot for Weldon. And yeah, so that's the quilt. That's my quilt. It was definitely a story. It was 3 hours first. And I told my DP, Mike Quigley, I was like, yo, it's about to be 3 hours. I don't know what to tell you. I said, we're going to bring back intermissions. We're going to start there. I looked up films that were 3 hours and showed them, like, look, see? And looked up intermissions. I Googled intermissions. Are they coming back? I was like, yo, it's going to be 3 hours. Like, I don't know what to tell y'all. Like, it's going to be 3 hours. So, like, whatever. And, you know, it is not 3 hours anymore, less than 2 hours. But it was a lot to put that quote together. It was a lot of people who I had to not interview, or I wasn't able to put in. There's some themes in Weldon's life that I couldn't include. So even that, you know, I feel remorseful about that. So I am working on a book.
Oh,
right?
nice.
Or an oral biography where I can use some of these interviews, you know, in written form. That way I can tell a complete story of this process, this journey. And I also am working on a short film about the making of the film, which I think, again, the making of that quilt, just the cutting of and what I had to cut out of my life in order to do this film.
Wow. It's so crazy how it went. The story started from, I couldn't find anything, and then Weldon physically just showed up in those 7 boxes for you. And I think that when you are like doing the thing that you're supposed to do, the universe just aligns. You just got to wait for that alignment to happen. That's like, I kind of got chills, honestly.
Thank you.
You know, just thinking about, again, like someone who was like a hidden figure, right? And not being able to get this information, and then like, he just shows up, and it shows up in his fullness. Like, just thinking about the hours and hours it takes, because that was my next question was like, your archive was crazy. Like, but it means even more now, knowing that all that was given to you, you know, and not necessarily you having to dig. I think that just makes it like a little more special. Because I mean, even the videos of like his grandmother's talking about him, you know, and like the campus. And I was like, and I used to work in museums at a Black History Museum, so that's my zhuzh. So I was just so wrapped up in all of the archival material that you had, and being able to hear his voice. And, you know, another high moment for me was when there was the radio recording, and they were talking about Young, Gifted, and Black. And the white guy was like, what if I had a song called Young, Gifted, and White? And then Camille Yarborough came and just shut the whole scene down. And Camille Yarborough means so much to me because her book, Cornrows, I grew up with. Like, that was one of my like favorite children's books. And so when I saw her on the screen, I was just like, this film just keeps getting better and better and better, right?
Thank you.
So, and it was crazy because she said she didn't even remember calling.
Right. That was a long time ago, you know. And I'm sure a woman, you know, with those principles, she probably was making these calls, you know, once a day, you know, once a day. There's a whole lot of correction. Hidden Figures, you mentioned that. You know, one of the women, I think, went to Hampton as well, or from Hampton as well.
Oh, she did?
Yeah, or was it went to Hampton, and I believe Walters High School in Hampton.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, thank you. So thank you for noticing. I tried to make it that experience for people where they would just be like, oh, and because, you know, again, I'm a DJ. I used to be a DJ, and it just, I felt like when I was editing it, I was like mixing like a tape or a party. And so I also wanted people to have the same ride that I had, because again, I didn't know who Camille Yarborough was. I didn't know a lot of these things. And the way I told the story was how I would pitch the story. And I'm like, and he had a son. I'm like, what? And like, so everything was like kind of like a whoa moment. Before this point, I wasn't really watching documentaries either. And so I wanted it to feel sort of different than what I saw as what documentary, you know, usually was. But yeah, you know.
I'm just like trying to like streamline all these notes. When I tell you, I stopped the film so many times, be like,
Thank you. that feels very good that you appreciate the film.
Let's talk about Liberated Brothers. So, I also love that there was this very specific time in our history when musicians and artists and any kind of creative person was just like, I'm making it very clear how Black my Black is. And this is how I'm going to show up on my album cover to speak to the film. And I think we're kind of in that moment now. But there was just a certain type of cool that Weldon had, you know, like, I think in a lot of ways people will kind of see him as being militant, but it was such like a swag to it. You know, like even at the beginning of the film when he was like, well, let me get my hat right. I need to make sure my hat's sitting the way I need my hat to sit. Because I'm righteous, but I also got to look cool.
Right. You got to be righteous and cool. Yeah, Weldon definitely, he had that. He had swag. And it's funny because I didn't really realize, but if you look at the year Liberated Brother came out, you look at other album covers, like he's telling the truth. Like this was really a new thing that people were doing, especially in that whole jazz funk scene. You had people with tuxedos, you had people with, you know, the whole band, you know, with the brass out and everything. But Weldon, I can't say he was the first to do that, but it is very interesting, you know, to look at and compare other covers in that genre at the same time. Like he was very intentional, you know, about this. And you got to remember, like Young, Gifted, and Black, he wrote the lyrics to that. And another song, which I'm sorry, I was not familiar with. I knew about it, but I never really, you know, now I know. But, you know, he wrote the lyrics to that, right? He also wrote the lyrics to Nina Simone's Revolution. And so you look at Nina in those few years in the, Miss Simone, those few years in the late 60s that Weldon was working with her. You could see what was pumping out, you know, it was a lot of revolutionary stuff. So Weldon, it became his time to manifest his project, him being the front man. He definitely was going to bring some of that revolutionary swag with him. And that's, you know, very much appreciated by me. And I'm going to share with you behind the scenes some audio to show you how much swag Weldon had in some of these radio interviews. It's very interesting to hear Weldon, you know, in action. You know. He was a very smooth person. And the revolutionary thing, you know, obviously it went to him. And the Amadou Diallo case, which I know I'm going with, you know, further on, which happened February 4th, right? And some of that again, that we're going to say quilt, you know, we formed that in this conversation, right? So you and I, just that quilt, just what happens when the quilt is done? And he's like, what, another piece? Like, I know about quilts actually, you know, like what, how do you deal with that? Mm-hmm. How do you deal with what, another thing? I've been doing this since the 60s. I've done seen this happen and this happen and this happen. And it was all on his back, right? Because if you're a young 20-something-year-old and you have a success like To Be Young, Gifted, and Black with an artist like Nina Simone, you're gonna very early get the idea that your words matter and your words can change things, mm-hmm. right? More than any other, you know, wide-eyed person, you're gonna be like, oh, I did this, oh, and this had this effect, oh, well, this is clearly what I'm meant to be doing. This is clearly, you know, what I can do. And when he felt like he couldn't do anymore, you know, what do you do? Mm-hmm. And we saw earlier in the film that the way that Weldon learned how to express himself as a child was to play music. Mm-hmm. And then I hope y'all saw the film, those who are watching, but you know, and those who saw it towards the end, he said after 9/11, it's like he no longer could play music. Mm-hmm. So what happens? Because he's a little, like a child, like 7, 8 years old, right? You know, no mother, no father, you know, in the house. All he knows is I can play on this piano, self-taught, play on this piano, right? Well, I mean, the trauma taught him, you know, he was self-taught, but play on this piano, and now I can't make anything anymore. What do I do? Mm-hmm. You know, and you know, I always drive it home to the mental wellness because that's a very important theme for me.
No, it is. And I think like what happens to a person when like that one thing that brings them joy is taken away, you know? And like one thing that really kind of hurt me watching in the film was when someone was like, he knew everybody, but like no one, he was a mentor to everyone, but there was no one to mentor him. There was nobody that was bringing him into the fold or into the mix, and like what that does to a person. Like when I say I grew up singing Young, Gifted, and Black at all my school events, like I mean that. Like that song is so huge, and for people to not know your name, like I can't even imagine how that feels. You know what I mean?
Right.
And to just have poured so much into other people, like for decades upon decades upon decades, students, and I think someone else said it in the film, like, you know, his students were going off to do these amazing things, and he's still, you know, he's still in New York trying to figure it out, you know?
Right.
And so I guess that can kind of lead us into talking about Young, Gifted, and Broke at the Billie Holiday Theater, which again, I always love watching films, and like certain like pillars are still there. And so if y'all are not like familiar, Billie Holiday Theater is right in Bed-Stuy on Fulton Street. Get you a subscription. They've been having programming all quarantine, so please support. You can talk a little bit about like the play, and I love that y'all even had like the clip of the play, and then had some of the musicians that were a part of it, how you kind of brought that story together.
Cool. So the clips of the play, so I'll dial back. Young, Gifted, and Broke was a film that Weldon Irvine wrote. It was his first film at the Billie Holiday Theater. He did it because he wanted a check. You know, he was kind of like, he felt blackballed from the industry, and he wanted to find another way to make money. And so he told the story that he knew, his story, right? And the story of other artists that he knew growing up, whether it be in Queens or Virginia. And it was just about a young man who was doing music for the, you know, the right reasons, and the music was stolen, and music was commercialized. And it won an Ordelco, I believe you pronounce it, Ordelco Award, and it ran for many weeks. It was a hit. Not in the film. Was it in the film? I don't know. But Sam Jackson was a stagehand on that film.
Wow, I don't think that. I don't think that. But I also could have been taking notes and missed it.
Probably wasn't. It wasn't in the film. But he was a stagehand, you know, in that film. And Weldon found the band at High School for Performing Arts, or as when I grew up, it's called LaGuardia High School. And he staked out talent shows, and he met the teenagers and gave them the opportunity to play. So Weldon, again, you know, he went looking for seeds to help blossom. You know, he got them their first, some of them, their first paychecks, their first esteem with truly professional gigs that got acclaimed throughout the city, because the Billy was a big place as far as Black culture in the country, and this was the biggest film going. And here you have these teenagers, right, who were doing the music, and one of them was Bobby Broom was actually, you know, on the stage as well. And this is who Weldon Irvine was, looking for children. I don't know who does that. I don't know who bypasses all the professionals that I know and just goes look for the next generation. To this day, I don't watch TV. I ain't see Arsenio. I ain't seen anything where the band was a bunch of teenagers. I don't see that. But that was Weldon, right? That was the beauty of Weldon. That's why his legacy still survives. The footage from the play came from a documentary called The Edification of Weldon Irvine. And this film was produced in 1976 by a gentleman named Collis Davis. Collis was one of Weldon's childhood friends, grew up on the campus of Hampton as well. And Collis went to film school at NYU. And the Edification of Weldon Irvine was Collis's thesis film.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So he's like, you know, I go like, you know, my man who does music, my man got a record deal, I'm gonna do him. Like that's, you know, that's easy, right? And so Collis took a lot of pictures. Collis covered him, and so the footage you mentioned of his grandmother, a lot of that black and white footage of Weldon growing up, that came from Collis's film, and then the some of the color footage came from Collis's film as well, when Collis revisited interviews with Weldon. And so it was a blessing to get Collis's support. You know, we did our business. It's important. You gotta do your business, right? Can't be lifting things from YouTube and all that. Gotta talk to the people who own stuff and gotta break bread and make, you know, agreements. And that's what we did. And he became, you know, one of the advisors of the film. I had 3 advisors. I had Collis was an advisor. I had a friend of mine, Angelica Beener, who also was in the film and also became a producer of the film. She is just an expert in the subject matter, and she is in the lineage of Thelonious Monk and T.S. Monk and Oliver Beener, and she just kept me true to the art form. Right, I'll ask questions like, "Yo, is so and so like it? Yo, you need to get him in the film." Like, "Oh, I didn't even know," or you know, And she's the one that brought Layla Hathaway to the film, and Casey Benjamin. And then you had Napoleon Rebels Bay, who played the drums on, I think, mostly all of Weldon's records in the '70s, and he was more so the person who just kept me, you know, zenful and such. He was a very spiritual brother, and he was a person that I can go just like when I just like, I didn't know if I could do it, or, you know, and he would just like, you know, talk to me and give me a lot of encouragement. And so to have 2, you know, of 3 of these people to be elders, right? I am respectfully to people who I've known. I don't feel as though I've had elders until this project of this particular ilk, right? I want to keep that, you know, because I know a lot of people who are older than me and a lot of people who did put me on, maybe the same age group, but just the way that I was raised, it was a whole different type of leadership. And I never knew that this existed, you know, and so everyone became this, I would say, unofficial advisors, like Miss Marjorie Moon, you know, definitely, you know, Nana Yarbrough, you know, and it was a blessing to, even though I didn't know who she was, I know about cornrows. I think I might have heard about cornrows maybe. But just when I, you know, when she sat in the chair, I instantly knew who she was. I mean, I did obviously did my research. You know, I found a record that she was on, and you know, we played it for her. But once she sits down, you can just like, you can catch the aura. So it just felt really good to have that, especially, you know, at a time where I was losing my mother. You know, it was, you know, very important. So yeah, you know, so that was Young, Gifted, and Broke. And then Weldon did a whole lot of other plays. He did a play called Vampire and the Dentist. They play, just a lot of plays. Did a play called Over 40. So many plays, so many musicals that he did at the Billy. None of them were as big as Young, Gifted, and Broke, but he did a lot. He did a lot of stuff. And
So for you as like a multi-hyphenate now, like and just seeing the way that he juggled all the things, how do you juggle all the things?
I feel like I'm not a multi-hyphenate. What you counting? Don't count DJ.
Talk about you were in music and now you're
not anymore though.
Speaker.
Not anymore. So I cut out the music.
Okay.
That's a bold-faced lie. I started to play the keys. I mean, I took lessons before in the past, but I actually did recently produce an album. You know, I played. So all right, so you got me. You got me. I forgot about that. But I promise you, I'm a dual hyphenate. How do I do it? So thanks for asking. I only do things when I feel like I don't have a choice to do them. So when I say I produced an album, the album was for a young MC, you know, he's 28 years old, and he's from Crown Heights, Brooklyn, and he allowed me to create the soundscape for his album, but also he allowed me to kind of shape the subject matter. And the name of the album is I Heard It All Before, H-U-R-T, All Before. And so what we're doing, we're kind of like bringing out a lot of the trauma and speaking about just his PTSD, survivor's guilt, and things like that. And so, I mean, that's not negotiable to do that, right? Yusuf Hawkins film that wasn't negotiable. Things I'm working on right now, a few things. One of them is about the rising rate of Black children who die by suicide. You know, it's not negotiable. So, you know, how I do it, I do make time for mental space, right? I block out everything else that could cause trauma to me. Because I just went through a whole lot of traumatic experiences, you know, behind the scenes and dealing with these subjects. So I block things out. And even if I'm witnessing them, I block them out. I don't really let them in to my brain or into my heart, you know, so I can preserve a little bit of strength, right, and dexterity. But the thing is that I honestly, and for any, you know, newer filmmakers, like if it isn't like a fire burning that you got to put out, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what's gonna happen with you in your career. But I know for me, it wasn't a technical thing as far as like, you know, good scheduling. Obviously, I have one of those big calendars on the wall, but it was a fire. So it's like, how you put something? I don't know. This is a fire. I seen water. I rolled around the dirt. You know, it's this instinct, right? And it's the art is so much a part of me that there was just no choice, and the things that I did were just by instinct, and I don't play around. I guess the whole thing is I don't play around with it, right? It only takes a couple hours a day. Like, let's say if you're writing, do a page a day. You know, now I might be working on 4 different films at once. All right, a page for each film. And one trick that I learned when I was studying Latin junior high school, I would record myself talking, whatever, and I would just like sleep to it. I still failed a whole lot in Latin, but you know, for the film though, and I hate giving up this little gem, but I put it on audio, right, when I was editing, and I was like sleep to it. I'll sleep to it, you know, I'll drive to it. That way, if I can't just like plop down in front of a screen, I can really, you know, submerge myself with the film. And so 2 things, I'm just like, it's becoming a part of my subconscious, right? And then, well, I guess 3 things. Another thing is that I knew, this is the gym. I knew that if this film was good without you watching it, I know I had a film. I know I had a film. I know if I could drive around for 2 hours and it still be the bomb, I might as well say thebomb.com. I'm ready, old school with it. Thebomb.com, you know, then I knew I had a film. And I knew that, you know, we weren't going to rely on what you saw on the things. I couldn't afford a lot of things. I couldn't afford a lot of licensing to make, you know, the film that I wanted to make. So I had to kind of restructure. And then the last thing in terms of that, once it was in my subconscious, you know, I said, you know what, because I was in a rut. It was the whole 3-hour period. I was in a rut. And what I trained myself to think, this is Weldon's last piece. This is Weldon's last composition. How would Weldon do this? What would Weldon do, right? And I allowed that to take over me, right? This is not your film, bro. I'm sorry I have to tell you, it's not really your film, right? This is Weldon's film. This is his composition. How would he tell it? You know, now though, not when he was alive, trying to act like he was cool and everything, but you know, just giving him, you know, a voice after his physical, you know, death. What would he want his son to know? And for me, it became what someone picked up. It was kind of weird to pick it up. For me, it became a love letter to his son, right? That was his last piece, and that's what I wanted this whole thing to be, a love letter to his son. Now, mind you, and please give me give me that if you need to. but mind you, so Weldon was born October 27th, 1943. 43 sounds right. Weldon died on April 9th, 2002. I think that's right here. Yeah. So my mother died April 9th, 2018. Right. So the morning that I was like writing my little Instagram post about Weldon and all that stuff like that. She, after I went to see her and I left the hospital and she perished, right? And before then, I mean, I was a lot of the interviews were at her house because I was her co-caregiver, right? So I was there, I was just there, right? And so, well, how do you do that with him? I mean, how do you not do that, right? So, whereas in the future, I might have given myself the space to say, you know what, y'all, those who I raised money, from, sorry, you gave me these thousands of dollars. My mother's ill and at the hospital. I wish that was a part of my makeup. Maybe one day it will be. But instead, I'm editing while she's sleeping in the hospital room. I'm editing, what I'm saying? I'm scheduling interviews near the hospital, or, again, I'm in her home doing it. We're storing equipment for the use of film in our house. So, everything was home based. And then, so for her to pass on the same day that Weldon passed, it was huge. I was angry. Obviously, aside from her passing, I was angry that, damn, I'm never going to get rid of this connection. Right. Maybe I will, but at that point I was like, all right, so now it's merged, and there was a lot of guilt involved, and there was a whole lot involved, right? But all that to say, this is not a regular film, not a regular film.
No, I'm like over here trying to like hold it together because
let it go.
I'm serious, just because it's like, what a gift you gave to his son. And in some ways, it was also a gift for you as well. And like, just, so before I could, myself, I'm not even gonna go into it, but I mean, I think we here. I think we seeing each other on that. I got two more questions. I'm just trying to.
Look, this is what this film is for, right? Like, I made this film to people. I felt like even my short films, if you're not crying with something I do, then I ain't really did it. I feel like our people, both women and men, could use some more some honest crying, some crying without shame. And I really feel as though the Weldon Irvine story, and I might add, to add some humor and maybe dry you up a little bit, I do love jazz now. I love jazz. Like, I don't know what I was doing before jazz. But I think this film goes to everyone, who has felt unappreciated. I've been to wild funerals in my life. Wow, that means a lot for those who are listening. A lot of funerals in my life. And, one thing that's a shame usually in my greatest friends or family members is always about, well, he did this for me, he did that for me, or she was always there and she did this and that. It's always about what the person did for them, right? It's never really about who that person is, right? And usually that's the person's always stretching themselves. And I don't know how he did that. Well, I don't know how she made the time. And I think the film resonates within a lot of people because it's not really a music film. It's not really a jazz film. But if you're anyone, if you're a friend that's like that, if you're a doctor that's like that, if you're a teacher like that, you have to, a high school coach, or whatever, you have to know what it feels like to feel a bit forgotten. What it feels like to be attached to greatness, but people around you know, but people who are not around you, they don't know, and they remember me and all that. So it's a story about people who did not take their step right into the light. And it's like Revenge of the Nerds, kind of Revenge of the people behind the scenes. Writers know about this. Film festival programmers know about this. Bloggers know about this. I was there in the beginning of this. I was there throughout this. Why doesn't anyone know who I am, right? And so hopefully people watch the film, and after they weep a little bit, they look around at the people around them and they figure out, well, maybe am I doing this, to someone because, I'm the star, or I'm the principal right here. I'm the important person here. Am I doing this to anyone in my circle, or, how can I be better in acknowledging people? And so that's a lot of the power and the call to action of digging for Weldon Irvine is to dig for yourself. and dig for your loved ones. You know, hopefully they're still here, and if they're not, you have to dig a little bit deeper.
And I think that we can find these like nuggets of these people even when they're not physically here through the lineage of like the branches of like this tree that they planted, you know what I mean? And like looking at the film and seeing people who I love or who I look up to, or, you know, like a Casey Benjamin or a Layla Hathaway, or like, oh my God, when Jessica Caremore got on the screen and did her poem, I was like, ah! You know, because these are people who were very instrumental in, like, I don't know them personally, but very instrumental into like who I became and who I am today, you know? And so even thinking about like, I walked away feeling like I owed so much to Weldon Irvine. You know, indirectly, like not even knowing how much he impacted my life without it being direct, but through the lineage of people that he touched, like I was affected, you know, and I was molded and I was shaped. And so, you know, this, like you said, this film was just kind of bigger than just like some cute like music film, some music documentary, you know, like.
I like that. I'm gonna use that. It's not cute. It's not no cute. Yeah, it's not.
Cause you know it's a lot of cute music docs, you know.
I don't know nothing. I don't know nothing, Stephanie. I don't know nothing. They're all wonderful. I don't know nothing. I was inspired. I was inspired though by. I was like, oh, y'all like that? Oh, okay, I got you. Watch what I, you know. But yeah, they're all great though.
And I just wanted to kind of wrap this or start winding the conversation down with a quote that I like heard it. I said, let me run that back. When Weldon said, an artist is always going to speak, but the entertainer may shuck and jive.
Right.
And, you know, it's funny when we're talking about the relationship between him and Nina Simone, because her very, very famous quote is like, if you're an artist, you're supposed to reflect the times, right? And I just thought it was so funny how they had such similar quotes, but there was a way that we look at Nina Simone that we weren't able to look at Weldon Irvine in the same way. But the way that hit, like, an artist is always going to speak, but an entertainer may shuck and jive. And so as your star is now rising, I'm wondering.
Okay.
No, look, the Youssef film was doing numbers, you know, especially because I live in Bed-Stuy, so I know, like, walking past that mural, like, what that film meant for this community, in Crown Heights. So what will you be saying next? Like, what stories are you looking to tell next? I don't want you to put out all your deets on, like, you know, the surprise things that haven't been announced, but like, what are some stories that are like a fire for you right now, or that you're like burning to tell?
So what I can speak on is, again, with a sister that I know named Stephanie Carnegie, the film about the rising rate of Black and brown children who die by suicide, which is highest among any other ethnic group in the US. That's one thing that we're working on. Another thing that I'm working on, I can't speak much about, is a story about a 25-year-old named Carrie Ball Jr., who was a St. Louis resident who was murdered by 2 St. Louis police officers. He was, you know, fired upon 29 times. It's a story that it just predates Mike Brown, you know, by less than a year. So, you know, developing that story. The Yusuf Hawkins team, well, the director Mutar Ali Muhammad and one of our producers, Javon Frank, and I were working with Warner to develop a pilot for something. Can't talk about that. And I'm also in development of something that's, something I can talk about. It's pretty big though. Just stuff, you know, I have it written down and stuff. So, you know, just stuff. And I think that my quarantine project, besides the music, was a film called We Have No Leaders. And it was about the riots in Harlem in 1964. in July, which was the first long hot summer, and it was a time where Malcolm X was then in exile from the Nation of Islam. He was in Mecca. Adam Clayton Powell was also in exile from New York. Mayor of New York Wagner was in Europe. Governor Rockefeller of New York was on the campaign out of state for running for president against LBJ, who just became president a few months, prior. And you have this figure named Barry Goldwater, who people compared the previous president to. Just this figure who did a lot of dog whistling, and he split up the Republican Party, and he is the reason why Black people came, or MLK kind of said, you know what, not Republican anymore, because that's Barry Goldwater. We're going to go somewhere. We don't know where we're going to go. We might try Democrat. These times, and the biggest thing is that LBJ came with the Civil Rights Act of '64, right? And of course, everyone in the South, they were like, nah, we ain't gonna do that. We're gonna hang them instead. But in New York, where, racism just doesn't exist, right? In New York, they became what Governor Rockefeller did was put something into effect, 2 laws, right? The same week that the Civil Rights Act was put into effect, right? It was the 2 things you'll hear of them before. They're stop and frisk and no knock warrants, right? It's all the same time that the Civil Rights Act was enacted, in the country. It started in New York. And so you have all these leaders are out of town. And as it happens, a off-duty lieutenant in Yorkville, New York, shoot and kills a 15-year-old boy, James Powell, right? Said he had a knife. I'm saying, same script. And shot him 3 times, which back then was a lot. Which is funny because they're like, why shoot him 3 times for? Why 3 shots? That's what the picket sign said. And there was uprising for 7 days, and in Harlem, and no one was there. No one from Harlem. Malcolm wasn't there. Mayor Wagner, he didn't come back for a few days. There were no leaders, right? And the police commissioner didn't have any leader because his mayor was gone, and so he started firing live bullets. So many bullets were fired that they ran out of bullets by the 3rd day. Had to get a shipment from upstate. Yeah, so I'm working on that. So it's all archival. So it's a tough job to get that done because people don't really believe in that type of stuff. But it's all archival. It's called We Have No Leaders. It's all using footage from those times. Wish me luck with that.
If I am, and I want to see
give me a call about that. I need funds for that because people don't believe. But yeah, that's my new passion project. I wish it could have come out before the election, but it's just so very interesting that even with the uprisings back then, they said, oh, it's communist. It's not, the Blacks aren't mad. Why would they be mad? It's just communists doing it, It's just the same, same thing. Yeah, so that's what's next.
That's exciting. That's super exciting. We'll definitely be supporting you, showing up where you need us to show up, and sharing out with folks. And I just want to thank you again for digging for Weldon Irvine. Like, this film is definitely going to be one that's going to mean so much to the archive. And we just appreciate you for pushing through all those no's. And we're just super excited to have you as a part of the 28th Annual New York African Film Festival. So everyone, if you don't watch this talk for this last hour and don't know what we're talking about, because y'all rather be newsy first, please go check the film out on African Film Festival's website. And we just enjoy the rest of the festival. Victorious, thank you so much. Your name is so fitting.
Thank you.
So fitting. And enjoy the rest of the festival. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.